What's up, everyone? Welcome and thanks for checking out the Fun with Friends podcast. My name is Allie and I'll be your host on this fun little adventure. This is the very first episode of the Fun with Friends podcast. Huge thanks for everyone tuning in. I'd like to take this time to introduce myself and kind of explain the idea behind the podcast and how it came to be. Let's jump into this. My name is Allie, as I've mentioned, and I currently live in Alexandria, Virginia, which is just outside of Washington, D.C., and I've been living here now for, I think, around 4 years, but I haven't actually spent a whole lot of time exploring and taking full advantage of the city, which is definitely a part of the podcast and why I decided to do it. I'll dive more into this here in a few minutes. So a little background about myself. I grew up in a pretty rural part of Nebraska, in north central Nebraska. It's literally cows and corn for as far as you can see. The sign as you drive into our tiny little town literally says, "Welcome to Ainsworth, Nebraska, the middle of nowhere," and that is very, very fitting. I grew up farming from a young age, started farming when I was like 8 years old, and was looking to get out of Nebraska, so I took the very long journey across the border to Iowa. So I didn't make it too far, but I did make it out of Nebraska, and I went to Iowa for college, which if you've ever visited both Iowa and Nebraska, you will find that not a whole lot of difference between the two states, but it was good enough for me. So I had hopes and dreams of becoming Indiana Jones, so I went to school for anthropology and became an archaeologist. And I was bound and determined to not end up in a cubicle. I wanted to spend my days outside, roaming the forest, looking for artifacts, and I totally did that for like 6 years. It was awesome. I got to work in a lot of cool places. I got to meet a lot of really awesome people, and I'm still friends with a lot of those people to this day. So yeah, I spent 6 years kind of digging holes throughout the country. Spent time in Florida, Tennessee, Washington State, and also Hawaii, on the island of Kauai. I got to spend some time there, and that was absolutely amazing. Literally changed my life. And the longest time I spent anywhere doing archaeology was in Mississippi, on the coast in Biloxi, Mississippi, and I was there for 3.5 years. And that was really kind of the start of my disaster recovery career. I was there doing archaeology, but I also got to do some disaster deployments, and that was my career for a total of 7 years, doing 3.5 archaeology and then 3.5 just straight up disaster recovery work. That is really the main reason why I haven't spent a whole lot of time in Virginia and haven't really been able to dig into what the DMV has to offer. So yeah, I spent, a good 3.5 years doing disaster deployment work, or disaster recovery work. And that was great because I have always wanted to have a career where I'm helping people, and as an archaeologist, I didn't really know how to do that, and that opportunity kind of presented itself through environmental compliance and disaster work, and that was awesome. Like, I felt very fulfilled by it, and I felt like I was helping people, and it was, great. And the other side of it that was a huge plus is that I'm also a photographer, and so I was like, cool, like I'll get to travel a lot, I'll get to go to new places, which means I can take a lot of photos and kind of build out my portfolios. And so that was another really cool kind of opportunity that presented itself through disaster work. I think one of the main things I enjoyed the most, though, is that on each deployment, I kind of got to build my little, disaster deployment families is what I kind of thought of them as, and really meeting new people and forming new friendships. That was really a highlight of that whole experience. The downside to that, though, was that as I've mentioned, I was never home, and it was difficult to make plans and to really have a life and to do all of these things I wanted to do. I wanted to expand my photography business and, just have a normal life. And so I decided that I needed to switch professions and move into something that was a little less stressful, a lot less chaotic, and also something that was more stable. So that is what I did. Yeah, so it ended up being about a month and a half off from work just to take some time and really get my mind right. Was pretty worn down from deploying quite a lot, and part of that was figuring out what my next steps were. I started thinking about what I wanted to do outside of work that would make me happy, and that is really kind of how this podcast came to be. I've always wanted to do a lot of stuff and to try a lot of different things, and I've always been able to come up with reasons or excuses as to why I couldn't do them. And when I just got out of college, it was a lot about having crushing student loan debt, which I still have and will until I die probably. But the goal is to not focus on that and to instead focus on the things that I really want to do, and to not use that as an excuse not to. So I've always been very focused on kind of the financial restrictions, which of course I still am. But the great thing about the DMV is that there are a lot of free events that you can go to, which is amazing. And I intend to take full advantage of that fact. But, it was just another way for me to not put myself out there and try new things. Not only that, but I also had a dog, and I had a lot of guilt around kind of leaving him behind because, you work all day and then you spend just a little bit of time with them at night, and then to leave them on the weekend just made me feel guilty. Like mad guilt about leaving my poor dog behind and not spending enough time with him. So that was also another, great reason for me to make up excuses not to get out there and try new things. And, unfortunately, Gremlin passed away on Valentine's Day of 2018, and also around that time I ended a 3.5-year relationship, and so overall 2018 was kind of a rough year for me, but it definitely put things in perspective for me. It was the first time in almost 10 years that I didn't have any type of responsibility related to caring for an animal or a person, and so it really got me thinking about all the stuff I've been putting off throughout the years because of one reason or another. Figuring out what I wanted to do, to start living my life, to focus more on the things that make me happy and that I want to try, that again I've been making up excuses not to. So that's what I did. Again, in that month and a half I took off, I really just sat down and thought about where I wanted to go from here, and where I wanted to be in a couple of years, and what I wanted to do to make myself happy. And that is how the podcast came to be. And the more I thought about it, the more pumped I became about it, and just decided to do the podcast because I want to share these experiences. And even if no one listens to this, it's essentially an auto diary of the fun shit that my friends and I get into. And I also hope that it, maybe inspires others to get out there and to start trying new things, and to really put yourself out there, like work on your friendships, work on you, try new things, and really find the things that make you happy and bring you joy in life. And that's really what I'm hoping to get out of this, is to find the things on my list that really bring me happiness and make me feel good, and to bring my friends along for the ride. So that's really the goal of the podcast, is to encourage folks to get out there and try new things. And I'm hoping that it does that. If you're like me and you're just getting started with podcasting, it can be scary and overwhelming. That's why Anchor is such a great choice. It's one of the easiest ways to make a podcast, and best of all, it's free. It also has great creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Another great feature of Anchor is that they'll distribute your podcast for you. Your listeners will be able to access your podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many others. You can also make money from your podcast using Anchor, and that's with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place, and it's easy to use. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. So to touch on the format a little bit, I'm hoping to post an episode every week. I'm sure there will be some weeks where I don't post because, we didn't go on an adventure. But again, the goal is every week. There are going to be mini-sodes or what will be called fun facts every other week. And these are going to be short episodes, maybe 5 to 10 minutes at the most, and they're going to tee up the next adventure. And I'll also include some fun facts about whatever we're doing. So if we're going rock climbing, I'll try to include kind of a weird fun fact about rock climbing. I'm also hoping that, if folks have questions or comments, I can throw those into the minisodes as well. I think what would be super awesome would be if, listeners send in their advice for making friendships work and maintaining friendships, and then I can include that advice in each of the minisodes. So, something to think about. Maybe send an email or, DM me your thoughts on friendship, and I'll include it in a minisode. Next week will actually be a fun fact minisode. And then the following week will be a full-length adventure-sode. That will be when we get into what we've been up to, and those episodes will definitely vary in length. Some will be shorter than others. It's just going to depend on what we did. So in those episodes, you'll hear from my friends and me, and we'll talk about who we are, how we know each other, and the adventure that we just went on. So we'll cover, did we like it? Would we do it again? What was the best part, the worst part? Would we recommend it? Just kind of cover a range of topics related to whatever we just went and tried. We'll also go over some of the other adventures that we've been on in the past, so you can kind of get an idea of what our friendship is like and what some of the shit is that we get into. So yeah, that's like a general rundown of the episode format. I fully expect for it to change as we move along. Eventually you'll have met all of my friends, and then I will not need to introduce them anymore. So that part of the podcast will probably fall off a little bit, which means we can just focus more on the adventure that we've been on. I'm hoping to hear from the listeners, which hopefully there will be some. I want to know, what's on your list of things to do? What have you always wanted to try and you haven't, and what's stopping you? I want to know what you think the key is to a good friendship and maintaining relationship. And, even if you're not from the DMV area, if you have recommendations for awesome things to do, classes to take, places to visit, it can be anything, even like a really cool, unique dining experience, let me know. Especially if you know of like really cool, neat, free things to go on. Please send it my way. You can find me on Instagram at Fun with Friends Podcast. Also at Miss Faye Photo. That's MSFAYEPHOTO. And you can also shoot me an email at funfriendspodcast@gmail.com. That's FUNFRIENDSPODCAST@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from y'all. Thanks again for stopping by. I hope you stick around, check out some of the other episodes, and join us on our adventures.